Yo, what is going on guys? Extrafusion here, and today I'm going to be ranking every episode in The Walking Dead Season 7 from worst to best. So, Season 7 is a really weird season because although it was really slow, like a lot of moments were, I do consider it to be necessary because a lot of the development in this season is needed for the future seasons, right? But it was just way too slow. I think they could have gone a little bit faster. Maybe this could have been slimmed down to like 12 or 10 episodes. I don't think we needed every single scene and every single moment in this season, but a lot of it was just so slow because we had so many characters. Sometimes we went like 6 episodes without seeing a specific character, and obviously you don't like that because maybe your favorite character is, I don't know, Tara. Well, she's not in the first 5 episodes. Maybe your favorite character is Maggie. Well, there's a good couple episodes when she's not in it. Carol, we only see Carol in episode 2, and the next time we see her is all the way in episode 8. You know what I mean? So that's the problem I think the season had mainly, but I do think for building the world of The Walking Dead, it was kind of necessary in some ways. And when I do look back at the season, there were a lot of bad episodes and a lot of just lesser good episodes, I guess I could say. But the top episodes, though, were actually really freaking good, and it had some really good moments in it, a lot of solid scenes. But there's just a lot more of that meh stuff in it, you know what I mean? But let's get to it. We're going to rank all 16 of them from worst to best. Coming in at the number 16 spot, the worst episode of Season 7 is Hostiles and Calamities, which was episode 11. So this was the Eugene solo episode, and actually this is the only episode in The Walking Dead history where not a single walker dies in it. I thought that was really interesting. I actually looked through and made sure, and yes, this is the only Walking Dead episode where not a single walker was killed in it. That's not the reason it's bad or anything, but the reason it's bad is because the entire episode is just Eugene at the sanctuary, just, you know, living life pretty much. That's it. Like, we do not need 45 minutes of that. We do need some of it though. Some of it was really important because it kind of shows why Eugene turns to, you know, the bad side, right? I guess you can say the bad side, the savior side of life. He turns to it because of what was happening in this episode. He was kind of being respected more there. His smart brains were being sort of praised rather than when he's in the, you know, the normal communities. He's not really praised as much for it. So he felt like he had a place there. And that made sense. I think that made a lot of sense. And I didn't love how they handled Eugene's character. I would have preferred they didn't do what they did. But how it turned out in the end, I was actually kind of okay with it. But I do think that having a whole entire episode for it, like, no, we do not need that. Especially with some of the scenes, like him with the wives and stuff like that, just dragged on. I don't like this episode. It's one of my least favorite episodes of the entire show, and there's just not much to it. Even if you like Eugene, it's still not a good episode. I love Eugene. I think he's a great character, but I still don't like this episode. It's not needed. We don't need the entire 45 minutes of it. I think it could have been slimmed down to like 15 minutes. That's how unimportant a lot of the stuff in this episode is. You could probably get away with skipping this. You probably shouldn't, but you could probably get away with skipping the episode. But yeah, just an okay episode in my eyes. Coming in number 15 spot, I got episode 14, which was titled The Other Side. So this episode was kind of mainly focused on the hilltop, with specifically you had Rosita and Sasha going on this execution mission, which, like I said, there was a lot of stuff in this season where characters are doing dumb things. Characters making dumb decisions is not bad writing, but when it's dumb for that specific character, like you just wouldn't believe they would do that, that's when it starts being a little dumb. And I feel like the way they were trying to do it just felt off to me. I feel like these characters aren't that stupid with what they were trying to do, especially Sasha. A lot of their scenes together and talking, I just didn't really care much for them, especially because Sasha was going to die in the next couple episodes anyways. So, and it didn't really seem like it developed Rosita that much anyways. I just said Rosita in like a Spanish accent. What the hell? I didn't think I could do that, but the way I said, like, rolled my R. I never can roll R's. What the hell? That's weird. Whatever. But the episode did have a lot of other cool stuff to it. Like, the opening was beautiful. Like, no words were spoken, just some really beautiful music. Seeing the Hilltoppers training and seeing that scene with Maggie walking towards Daryl. Just the whole episode, how Daryl was like grieving and feeling guilty over the fact that he was the one who caused Glenn to die, and then them having that really beautiful conversation where Maggie was telling Daryl it's not your fault. That whole entire thing was so needed. I'm so glad they did it. and it made this episode not as bad. Honestly, it would have been 16 if they didn't have that episode, but the fact that it had that scene pushed it up a little bit. But other than that, there really wasn't much else to the episode. You had some Gregory and Simon scenes, which are usually pretty entertaining to watch, but we already had like a million of those, so it was okay. It was an okay episode. I don't know if it would necessarily be titled bad, but compared to a lot of the other Walking Dead episodes, yeah, maybe I would call it bad. Coming number 14 spot on episode 3, which was titled The Cell. I actually had this episode a lot lower previously, but I rewatched it and I was like, you know what? It's really not that bad. Daryl's torture, seeing him go through all of that was important to watch, just to see how he was impacted by Dwight and Negan and all these different saviors, and because that was important for later episodes, of course. And we get to learn a little bit about Dwight. We learn a little bit more about just the saviors in general and how they work, which I think is important. But I do think episode 7, which we saw later on, introduced the sanctuary in a much better way. This episode didn't really do that. They didn't even show the sanctuary on the outside, like that really cool shot they have in episode 7. We should have gotten that in this episode, because this episode felt much more closed into the sanctuary rather than showing what it looks like on the outside. I feel like they could have done a better job introducing the sanctuary, maybe even introducing the wives right away in episode 3. I think that would have been cool, but at the end of the day, it was a very, very bottled, very, very contained episode, and I think it just didn't show enough for what it was trying to do. It was a depressing episode, but it was supposed to be depressing. I get why, so I really didn't enjoy it that much, but it's not that bad. Coming in number 13th spot, I got episode 5, which was titled Go-Getters. So this was a Hilltop bottle episode. You're noticing all the episodes, the lower parts of the list, are all bottle episodes, because that's just how it is. Bottle episodes usually aren't as interesting because you're really taking a risk by focusing on one specific group. Because if that one specific group isn't entertaining in that episode, well, then you don't have anything else to fall back on. You know, that's literally it. So that's a problem. I think Maggie was pretty badass in this episode. He had some really cool scenes with her, like when she punched Gregory and she was like, you know, my name's Maggie Ree. And then you had her in the tractor, you had, you know, learning more. We haven't seen Maggie since episode 1 at this point, right? So it was nice to catch back up with her, see what everything's, you know, how everything's going on. We saw Jesus a little bit more, how badass he was. But a lot of it just felt stale, especially that scene when the walkers attacked and knocked down the fence, or when the saviors came and brought the walkers in with the music. That scene was just oddly shot, and I feel like they could have maybe made it a little more interesting, and they skipped over most of the walker killing anyways, as they like to do sometimes, often for some reason in the show. And you did have the Gregory and Simon scenes, which were nice as well. But at the end of the day, when you look back at this episode, not a lot progressed in terms of the characters, in terms of the story. Not a lot. We did have also some scenes between Carl and Enid, which were pretty cool to see them, but that's really it. I mean, they just had a kiss, and that's a nice scene, I guess. They didn't really further that relationship that well in the future, though, so I don't know what the whole relationship did for the story, to be honest. Maybe if Carl lived, it would have made more of a difference for the future, but since he didn't, I don't think they really should have dwelled on their love story that much. Obviously, they didn't know they were going to kill him off at this point in the story, I'm sure, so I guess that kind of changes it, but I just felt like it was dwelling on this relationship for a bit much, and I don't feel like it impacted the story that much, especially because Carl wasn't in much of season 7 or 8 anyways, so I guess that has something to do with it. Coming in number 12 spot, I got episode 12, coincidentally, which was called Say Yes. So this was the Michonne episode, pretty much. We see Rick and Michonne off on their little journey for pretty much the whole episode. You also had some scenes with Rosita, just looking around. You had some scenes with Tara talking to Judith. You know, just some, usual scenes. I do think the location they were at was pretty cool. They were at like a school, but it had like a little fair at the outside. They had like a little Ferris wheel. I thought that was a pretty cool location, but the episode itself wasn't that important. And that's a pretty big, I guess, theme with a lot of these lower episodes, is that a lot of them aren't important. It did develop the relationship well, which I think is really important. It had the whole conversation about Rick saying, he could die, and she has to accept that, which is so important for season 9. But do we need all of the rest of the stuff that they were doing in the episode to get to that point? For fans of the relationship Rick and Michonne, who really enjoy seeing them together, I think this episode's pretty cool for that. That's why it's a little bit higher up. But then again, they got a lot of guns in this episode, but at the end of the day, a lot of those guns weren't even used because Jadis was just asking for more anyways. And coming at the number 11th spot, I got episode 6, which was titled Swear. This is one of the most underrated episodes of the entire show in my mind. I really don't think it's a bad episode. I feel like most people call it a bad episode because it's Tara, right? Tara's a character that a lot of people don't like. Now, I enjoyed her character, I really did, but I don't think that just because it was only her in this episode that automatically makes it a bad episode necessarily. It of course still is a bottle episode, which is unfortunate because you don't want to see the same person this entire episode. You know what I mean? You want to see other people, but why I thought it was a good episode is because of how it introduced Oceanside, and the Oceanside community was actually utilized later on. I mean, at least in season 9, I think it was where it was really utilized. I hope it's utilized more in the future. But we had this whole episode because it was introducing this community, and I really did like the way they introduced it, how Tara walks through, it's all women, and they're all talking about how, the Sabers killed all the men and even some boys and stuff like that, and I thought that was really powerful. Some of the scenes were oddly shot, though. I noticed that a lot of scenes were just not well directed. That a couple episodes in the season had that issue. But Tara, man, she's just a fun character, and I think she made this episode for me. I could understand why you wouldn't like this episode if you didn't like Tara. I'm a big fan of her character, therefore I really did enjoy this episode. Now maybe that's biased, maybe you'd put it much lower. You didn't, but like I said, it's just my opinion, just my list, and I think Swear was a fine episode, but it had some issues, and obviously it being a bottle episode does bring it down a bit. Coming in number 10 spot, I got episode 13, which was titled Bury Me Here. So this episode had like some really great scenes, but the rest of it I think was kind of meh. So Morgan's acting, obviously Lenny James is a fantastic actor, and he was great in this episode. Seeing Morgan go back to crazy mode after not seeing that for a while was awesome. But I feel like the way they handled the whole scene was just kind of weird, how he just kills Richard like that and Ezekiel just watches and lets it happen. I feel like that reaction from Ezekiel would have been a little different. I feel like Ezekiel would have gotten involved or something, but the fact that he just lets it happen was really weird to me. I didn't really understand that, but a lot of the episode, like in the beginning parts, stuff like that, I felt like it wasn't really necessary. I did like Morgan telling Carol what happened with Glenn and everyone who died back home. But again, I believe every episode that I've done so far has been a bottle episode. So, like I said, that just goes to show bottle episodes are usually not going to be as good. They could be great. There's been plenty of great bottle episodes, but it's less of a chance of it being great because you're only focusing on certain people, you know what I mean? So this wasn't a bad episode at all. I think some of the writing was really, really strong, especially when the scenes when Morgan was going crazy and almost even kills himself. He was getting ready to, at least, because obviously after Benjamin got shot and died by Jared, which was a pretty crazy scene. I liked the episode. I did. I don't think it's great. I think it's just okay, but it's an okay episode. Coming to the number 9 spot, I got episode 2, which was titled The Well. This was the episode introducing the kingdom. Now, this was the episode coming after episode 1, of course, which was one of the most devastatingly depressing, brutal episodes ever. So I think we needed this episode to come right after it, and I'm glad they did, because originally episode 3 was supposed to come where episode 2 was now, and they're supposed to be switched pretty much. But seeing another depressing episode after an already depressing one would have been really a bad choice. So I'm glad they went with this much more, fun-filled sort of an episode where we get to see the kingdom, and it's all like magical. We see a freaking tiger, and Carol's like, what the hell is this crap? And Morgan's there, and it was a pretty fun episode, I think. I think it was really needed. It was very slow. There wasn't any crazy action happening, but like we kind of needed that, I guess. It was introducing the kingdom. We needed to see the kingdom in all its glory, and that's exactly what they did, and I think they did it really freaking well. And then they showed the more human side to Ezekiel, the more real side to him towards the end of the episode when he's talking with Carol, which was a really great scene. Great freaking episode. I liked it, honestly. It honestly is a big step up from the previous spot. Coming to number 8 spot, I got episode 9, which was titled Rock in the Road. So this was finally getting to the non-bottle episodes, actually. So this episode was coming directly after the mid-season finale. It was the mid-season premiere. And it really started with all the communities teaming up. We see Rick, talking to Gregory and being like, we got to do what we got to do, right? We got to go to war, or at least try to, at least fight back. And then it leads to them going to Ezekiel and the kingdom, and they're chatting. And it's so cool seeing all the communities coming together finally in this episode. And then obviously, it doesn't work right away, which makes sense. I think it would be kind of weird if Ezekiel right away said, oh yeah, let's go to war. It made sense that something had to happen first for Ezekiel to feel that way, and I'm glad that it did later on. But I think that scene on the highway as well was so cool, how they, brought the little wire between the two cars and just drove right through them. That was a really cool scene to see. And then they get to Alexandria and you see Simon there, and they're just looting the place because Daryl escaped, obviously, in the previous episode, so they're freaking out about that. And it was just it had a lot of stuff going on, you know what I mean? It's one of those episodes that didn't really, it did progress the plot substantially. And in the end of the episode, they come across the scavengers, which we see in the next episode, obviously. So this was a great way to come back to The Walking Dead. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do with premieres, and I've always said that premieres need to just get you back in that Walking Dead feel, and this episode did that really, really well, but there wasn't really much to it that was overly special to put it anywhere higher on the list. Coming at number 7 spot, I got New Best Friends, the episode that comes right after episode 9, episode 10. Now, this episode was kind of weird. It was the first 20 minutes of the episode, or 15, was literally just with the kingdom, and you had Daryl and Richard, and they were trying this thing because Richard was trying to get them to start problems with the Saviors, so then something would happen, someone would die, specifically Carol, so Ezekiel would want to go to war. But I liked how that worked out, and then Daryl caught on and was like, no, it's Carol you're talking about, I believe. So then they got into this big issue and they fought, and then they left, and I guess that was necessary to show Daryl where Carol is, and then Daryl eventually found Carol, and then of course they had that nice scene in the end of the episode, which I really liked. But that wasn't the stuff I really liked about this episode. I actually really liked the junkyard stuff. I know a lot of people hate the scavengers. I think they're a stupid group. I thought they were kind of dumb until season 8 episode 10, which was the episode they all died in, and we finally learned a little bit more about them and why they were the way they were. And then I was like, you know what? I'm fine with it, man. They had a cool design to them. I liked the location they were in. I think the coolest thing about it was that damn Winslow Walker. Honestly, if they didn't have the Winslow Walker, this episode might be a spot or two lower. That Winslow Walker was badass. Seeing Rick have to fight it, gladiator style, oh, that was just so sick. There was some really bad CGI in 1 or 2 shots in this episode, but that's not really a big problem in my eyes. I'm not going to usually complain too much about CGI issues, especially if it's just one frame or a couple frames or whatever. I don't care, but it's just something to note at least. But the majority of the episode was just really, honestly, a great episode in my eyes. Coming to the 6th spot, episode 15, which was titled Something They Need. This was the penultimate episode before the finale, and again, it had a lot of shit happening. You had the group going to Oceanside to get Oceanside's weapons, and that was probably the best part of the episode, and they did it peacefully. Obviously they blew some stuff up, but they didn't kill anyone, and that was their whole plan because, Tara knew they were good people. They were just really cautious, so you have to do it really, really smartly. You have to keep guns on them, make sure they're not going to do anything, and they ended up kind of teaming up. I wish that the Oceanside actually helped in the war more so. I feel like the fact that they didn't until the very, very end, it kind of pulls a little of the Oceanside stuff back a little bit for me, but I do like how they at least accepted it and gave them the guns, and the plan worked, so that was fine in my eyes. You had a couple other things, you had Sasha back in the sanctuary, and that one creepy ass dude tried to rape Sasha, and then seeing Negan kill him. This is, I think, when the episode started to show the more human side to Negan. Well, human, he still killed someone, but he was killing a rapist, so it shows that he has morals and he has rules regardless of being crazy and a psychopath, and I think that's important to show because obviously with the redemption arc that comes later on in the show, we kind of needed to see his more, human side, and the fact that he has morals and that he's not going to let something like that happen in his community. So I think that was insanely important. And then the episode ends with Dwight coming, obviously, and Rosita, because Rosita found him in the last episode at the very end. And then we see Rick, the ending shot of the episode, him holding his gun saying, "Get on your knees." That was pretty freaking cool. And seeing Dwight get involved in everything, which we see in the next episode, but it was just cool to see it start in this episode. And I think this was a pretty great episode. I don't think any of these episodes so far have been above great, though. They've all been just kind of, like I said, either bad, okay, good. I think we're starting to get into the better episodes, and the top 5 here are much better episodes. Let's consider the next 5 to be top 30 material, maybe top 40 material, but they're still pretty good episodes in the next 5. Coming to the number 5 spot, episode 4, which was titled Service. So this episode was long as hell. That's something that's very noticeable about a lot of season 7 episodes. They were extended. Maybe that's why people consider this season to be really, really slow is because so many episodes were extended. It was a much longer season than any season we ever had before. But I really, really liked this episode. It was very dialogue heavy, but it was great dialogue. Just seeing Negan going through Alexandria, just checking things out, was creepy, unnerving. You know, you always were wondering what the hell's gonna happen because someone's gonna do something, someone might die, I don't know, and shit keeps happening. You know, Carl's firing shots, then you have Olivia fucking up with the guns, keeping track of them, so then Negan's freaking out, and it's intense. I mean, intense. And that's really the only part of the episode I really, really liked, honestly. There really wasn't much else to it, but that's good enough. Negan honestly makes everything go from being alright to like amazing, and you'll notice that these next 5 episodes all have a lot of Negan in it, so that's really important to realize that obviously I really like Negan. I think a lot of people do, and the more of Negan, the better, to be honest. So having so much Negan in one episode is great, especially when he's interacting with characters like Rick. It was awesome to see, and these episodes, specifically Service is one of them, really showcased that. It had a lot of iconic comic book moments in it as well, brought to life on screen, which was so nice to see. I really enjoyed this episode, man. There's not really much else to say. I don't think there was any negatives to it. You know, you had a couple scenes with Rosita and Spencer going out and then talking, and Spencer being like, I don't trust Rick or whatever. But they're all necessary, I think. They lead up to, obviously, Spencer dying in a later episode. I like this episode. I do. Coming in number 4 spot, episode 7, which was titled Sing Me a Song. Same thing with episode 4. A lot of Negan, and this time he's interacting with Carl a lot of the time, and they were such great scenes. The episode starts with obviously Carl coming and just shooting people, just shooting saviors, right? He wants to kill Negan. He doesn't though, which was a little odd. I'm like, why didn't you just shoot him? That's what you came there for, right? But maybe he was just scared, I guess. I don't really know. But the episode had so many different groups. You had Aaron and Rick out on this little run. You had Michonne coming across this girl wanting to check out the sanctuary or something because she wanted to see where the other saviors were. That whole thing was really odd to me. I never really understood that. And then the next episode, it kind of continues on with the Michonne and this random savior chick. Yeah, I don't really like those scenes that much. But the most important part of this episode is obviously Carl at the sanctuary. You know, Negan showing Carl the sanctuary, showing him the wives, showing him burning Mark's face. This gave us a good look into the sanctuary. It did it much better than episode 3 did. Actually showed us what the community is like, which is exactly what we needed to see to understand the community. And then by the end of the episode, you know, Negan returns to Alexandria, or just goes back to Alexandria, and that all was great as well. You see the funny scene with Olivia, where Olivia slaps Negan, and then, you know, Negan's checking out the house, Negan's holding Judith. Like, really great scenes in this episode, and it's just an iconic one. And you get to see Carl's eye socket as well when he's like being forced to sing a song or whatever. Like, those were just some classic scenes that also in the comics being brought to life. This season brought a lot of comic book moments to life, which I really do appreciate. Coming number 3 spotting episode 8, which came right after episode 7, Hearts Still Beating. Again, same thing as episode 7. A lot of shit was happening. You had Spencer's death, obviously, which was done perfectly, just like the comics, but it was, I think, done perfectly. The knife that he used was gigantic. That was so cool seeing him do that. And, you know, we didn't really care too much because most people hated Spencer anyways, so most people were like, oh, word, I wanted to see Spencer die. Negan in this whole episode was hilarious, right? We all know that he was hilarious. He's always hilarious, but this episode, more than any time, I love how he shaved his beard. I loved that because I wanted to see Negan clean shaven. I think he looks better clean shaven. I think he looks more menacing when he's clean shaven. I don't know why he looks more menacing that way, but he does. I really liked it. You had more stuff with Aaron and Rick. Obviously, they were trying to get that boat supplies, and, you know, Aaron almost died in the water, and some interesting stuff there as well. But the ending of this episode, I think, is the best part of the entire episode. When Rick and the community, a couple of them from Alexandria, return to Hilltop with Maggie, and Rick's telling Maggie we gotta fight, and then Daryl's there, and they have that nice hug. Daryl returns the revolver to Rick. That scene was beautifully done. The music, the way everyone's looking at each other, the acting. I love that scene. It's one of my favorite scenes in The Walking Dead history, and it really encompasses what this season's all about. It's about being brought down by Negan, right? And then rising up to defeat him eventually, which they don't do till like the end of season 8, but they're rising up and they eventually get to war by the end of the season. I love this episode. I think it's a great mid-season finale and comes in number 3 spot. Now we're in the top 2, which are, yes, the best 2 episodes of the season and are also really great episodes. Actually amazing episodes. Actually, I'd consider these to be like near masterpieces. First of all, the season finale, episode 16, comes at the number 2 spot. What an episode, man. So the only thing I didn't like about this episode was, okay, Sasha's death felt really weird to me. I just don't get why she thought that killing herself would like do much. It ended up helping them, it did. But what was the thought process there? It just coincidentally helped them. You know what I mean? Because Carl decided to start shooting. But she said only one of us has to die, right? But why did she think that her killing herself would mean Negan would be like, oh, I guess one of you did die, so I won't kill any of you? That's not how Negan thinks. I thought that was odd, and I thought some of the scenes with Abe and Sasha, those flashbacks were, it was nice to see Abe again, but I didn't really, there was too many of them, I think. But everything else about this episode was so good. The battle was great. It was like the last half of the episode. It was a long battle. You know, you had the Jadis twist, obviously, where the scavengers were working for Negan, which a lot of people saw coming. I think I did as well, but a lot of people also didn't see coming. It was still a great twist, and it was like a holy shit moment. How are they going to get out of this? And they did, and we had a pretty great battle go on. And then, you know, they get captured, Rick and Carl, and then that one scene where Rick's talking to Negan was so badass. And then you see Shiva coming, and then the Kingdomers and then Hilltoppers, they all come here, and it's a big war. Everyone's together. It's a massive battle. Great. And the ending was so good as well. Beautifully done ending. How, you know, you have Maggie doing that speech with the beautiful music. It was such a great episode, man. I really, really think this was a great start to All Out War, because this was basically the start to All Out War. I wouldn't really want it any other way. Like I said, I do think the season should have been shortened a little bit. Maybe this should have been like episode 11 or something, episode 12. And they could have somehow fit in, you know, the All Out War into the last couple episodes of season 7, and then extended it on to season 8, maybe for like 8 episodes or something like that. I think they could have done that, but I'm not gonna, you know, go on it for too long. I think this episode itself is still such a great episode. I know a lot of people hark on it for having a couple weirdly shot scenes in the battle, but honestly, I kept looking at it and I was like, it doesn't look bad at all. You have a couple scavengers that like aren't really shooting in some scenes, they're just standing there, but I think that's just because the scavengers didn't really want to shoot and kill the survivors. I think they were just trying to hold them back, but then they, you know, they ended up escaping, and it was just a great episode, honestly. And the number 1 spot, not only do I think this is the best episode of the season, but I don't know. Objectively, I feel like it might be the best episode of the whole show. I still don't know. I still think Too Far Gone is really great. I think No Way Out is really great. But this episode is just so freaking good, and that is, of course, episode 1. The Day Will Come When You Won't Be. I love this episode. I cried a lot during this episode. I know most people did. It was horrifyingly beautiful, and that's such a weird thing to say, but like, the episode was shot so beautifully. The directing, the editing, from everything about this episode, from, you know, the flashback scenes showing all the different characters and all the different, you know, memories Rick has with them, to the actual event itself, the gore, how gruesome it was, seeing Abe and Glenn get their heads bashed in front of the group, how terrifying it was coming off of the season 6 finale. I don't think the cliffhanger hurt this episode at all. I don't. I hated the cliffhanger, but the fact that we saw this episode afterwards, after it, I was like, you know what, I don't even care anymore. It was done perfectly. I was spoiled, I knew it was coming, but it doesn't matter. It was done so well that it still impacted me probably just as much as it would have if I wasn't spoiled for it. Because if I wasn't spoiled, I probably would have just been more anxious. I probably would have had, like, you know, a freak out, but it would have been just as impactful, I think. It was such a perfect, almost perfect. There was maybe like 1-2 minor things I can figure out if I like looked in depth into the episode, but looking at it at a surface value, it's near perfection. You know, you have the scenes where Carl is about to get his arm chopped off, and that was just brutal to see Andrew Lincoln, Rick, but he was just like doing such a good job at acting, just freaking out with snot coming out of his nose and stuff, and he was just like broken. Lauren Cohen's acting, plays Maggie, was just amazing as well. Seeing her break down, not even being able to speak, that's how broken she was. It was heartbreaking to see that. The music, the soundtrack, Bear McCreary killed it in this episode. It's a beautifully horrific episode. It's just it's so hard to put this into words because of how good this episode is. And I think it's going to go down as one of the best TV episodes in history in terms of how it was written and directed and edited. It really should. And I'm glad that they chose this episode because I'd say it's one of the most important episodes of the whole show. It's kind of a turning point for many people. I mean, this is when most people stopped watching the show, which is unfortunate. I do think they did because they, their favorite characters died and maybe it was too gruesome for them. But like I said, I'm fine with the brutality. I am. I think sometimes things have to be a bit brutal, right? Because it's a show, and that's what the Walking Dead universe is about, part of it. But this episode just did it all perfectly. They showed us everything. They didn't hide from it, and that's what I loved about it. So, Season 7, like I said, it's a rocky season for me. It's one of my least favorites, but I think they got some really strong stuff in there, and that's what I think really brings it up more, and I think it's necessary. For some parts, the way it was, how slow it was in some portions, I do think it could have been shortened a bit. But you know what, honestly looking back on it, I was kind of okay with the way it was because I was okay with how everything turned out and the development that was, brought to us by this season. Because this season was a turning point for this show. This season expanded the show substantially into completely different horizons. I mean, come on, it was much bigger. And I really appreciated that. So yeah, hopefully you guys all enjoyed the video and I'll see you guys in my next one. Peace out.